Question: how do you make Gantt charts? Hey, Sindre here. I teach project management and I grade maybe 100 term papers in project management every single year. Half of them are bachelor, half of them are PhDs. And the interesting thing is that many of them are struggling with making Gantt charts. For the uninitiated, Gantt chart is just a scheduling technique. Probably one of the more famous one, probably the most famous one, maybe except for milestone list. But anyway, but when I say that they are struggling, I don't really mean that they don't know the theory on how to make Gantt chart. It's more that most of my students, at least, they don't know how to make it, how to actually draw it. They know the theory behind it, but they don't know how to implement it in practice. If I'm going to guesstimate there, maybe 60 to 70% are using a very extreme ad hoc approach, such as just drawing it in Microsoft Paint, or just drawing rectangles in maybe in Word or in PowerPoint, and then just putting different blocks there. Some extreme ad hoc solution. So I thought in this video I will just show you, how to draw it in Excel. Yes, I'm aware that there are dedicated software you can use, but when you're a student, you probably don't have access to that. So this is not really for people in industries, the professionals. This is more for students who just need to make a sufficiently good-looking Gantt chart. So let's look at that. So first thing I want to say about making Gantt chart is that Gantt chart isn't really an independent scheduling technique. You can't just do a Gantt chart and that's it. You actually have to use another scheduling technique called network diagram. I know in the literature that network diagram and Gantt chart are portrayed as two independent, different ways of doing scheduling. But the thing is, all of the required inputs in the Gantt chart, they come from the network diagram. So you need to do a network diagram first before you can do a Gantt chart. So in a way, Gantt chart is actually just a diagrammatic illustration of the network diagram. So before we proceed, there are two types of Gantt charts you could make. One is called the early start Gantt chart, and the other one is called the late start Gantt chart. And among these two, the former is more popular than the latter, so I'm going to cover the former one. But don't worry, if you know how to make the early start Gantt chart, then it's very easy to make a late start Gantt chart. So, what inputs do you need? You essentially need 4 different inputs in order to make the early start Gantt chart. And these inputs will change slightly if you look at the late start. But the 4 inputs you need, first of all, you need a list of activities. You need a list of activities that constitute the project. So if you do all these activities, then the project is done. These are the activities that you need to do in order to bring about the project deliverables, which is why we are doing the project in the first place. So number 1, list of activities. Number 2, you need to know the duration of each of the activities, like how long are they going to last? Is activity A going to be 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 hours? Like how long is it going to be? We need to know. We need to have a number. Then you need to know the earliest starting time, shortened to EST. Like what is the earliest point in time that this activity can start? And we usually use a time index there. So the current date, currently right now, that will be time period 0. And if our frequency of time here is day by day, then today will be day 0, tomorrow will be day 1, then day after tomorrow will be day 2, and so on and so forth. So the number here for the EST. What's the earliest point in time that an activity can start? EST. And then finally, you need to know the float. And the float basically means how many time periods can you delay this one particular activity without delaying the entire project. So the float could be, for instance, 5. That would mean that we can delay this particular activity by 5 time periods before we start delaying the entire project. So the entire project won't increase in duration as long as this particular activity is not delayed by more than 5 time periods. If it's delayed by 6 time periods, then we will get then the project duration, the entire project duration will increase or expand by 1 day. So that's how that works. And all of these 4 inputs in the Gantt chart, they come directly from the network diagram. So the network diagram, it will generate 5 different outputs. it will generate the earliest starting time, the EST. It will also generate the EFT, that's the earliest finishing time. It will generate the latest starting time, the latest finishing time, and the float. So it's generating all these outputs. And as you can see, two of these we need inside of the Gantt chart, so the EST and the float. However, to make the network diagram, you need inputs. There are three different inputs you need in order to make the network diagram. You need a list of activities, which is also the input that you need in the Gantt chart. I kind of lied there. One of the inputs in Gantt chart doesn't really come from network diagram, it comes from somewhere else. But anyway, network diagram, three inputs. It needs list of activities. It needs dependency. We need a specification of dependency between each of the activities in that list. So are they independent or are they independent? And finally, we need to know the duration of each of the activity, how long are they going to last. So as you can see here, a list of activities and duration, those are two inputs, both network diagram and Gantt chart. So where exactly does the network diagram gets these inputs from? Well, different sources. The list of activities, that is the output of generating a work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure is a way to specify or to figure out what are the activities involved in the project. So that's an entirely different method. And it also has its own inputs. Basically, you need to know what exactly is the project, what is the project, you need to define the project, and then you can make a work breakdown structure. I'm not going to cover that though. To get the dependency between activities, there is no method there beyond just using common sense, just figuring out, okay, are these activities dependent or independent? If they are dependent, what type of dependency are you dealing with? Is this a start-to-start relationship, or a finish-to-finish relationship, or start-to-finish, or finish-to-start? You need to figure that out using your common sense. And to figure out the duration, there are different methods you could use. In the project management body of knowledge, the Bible of project management, a list of best practices, they mention 10 different methods that you can use to estimate cost. But you could use these methods also to estimate time. So the methods that are suitable from the PM book is, for instance, expert judgment, analogous estimation, parametric estimation, 3-point estimation, bottom-up approach, and also group decision-making techniques. So in one of my courses, I spend an entire lecture on each of these estimation techniques, so I can't really recap that here. When it comes to work breakdown structure, yeah, that's also an entire lecture. So to proceed here, I think you need to look at one of my previous videos, which talks about how to make the network diagram, how you take these three inputs and how you then do a forward pass and a backward pass in order to generate the outputs. So I think you need to look at that. I'm not going to recap that video, but here is the video. Look at that. Assuming you did, let's move on to actually making the Gantt chart. And here we are in Excel. So we have a very simple example here. A project which is about building some kind of oil and gas platform. So the first stage really, that I'm going to start from at least, is to make the network diagram. This example I covered in the other video, so look at that. But just to recap quickly, we have a list of activities here. So we have 8 different activities. Initiation, engineering platform, engineering pipeline, like the jacket, deck, building pipeline, tying, completion, blah, 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 blah. We have a specification here of the relationship. So for instance, activity B can only start when activity A is finished. Activity F, for instance, can only finish when C is finished, and F can start when C is finished. G can start when both D and E are finished, and so on and so forth. And then we have the duration or estimation of the duration, how many months each of these steps is going to take. So with this information, that is all you need in order to make the network diagram, which I have made over here. So first activity A, then B and C comes, and after C comes F, and after B comes D and E. And once D and E are done, we get G, and once G and F are done, we get H. That's like the network diagram. You see these boxes here. In the top left corner, you have the earliest starting time, then you have the duration, and then you have the earliest finishing time. Bottom left here, you have the latest starting time, then the float, and then the latest finishing time. So look at the other video and you can see exactly how I did that. As you can see, I just did it manually here, but there are more automatic ways you can do this sort of thing. So once you have done the network diagram, then you can start making the Gantt chart, and it's pretty straightforward. So remember, we need a certain inputs there. We need the list of activities, we need to know the duration, but the things we need from the network diagram specifically, that's the earliest starting time and the float. So if I zoom in a bit here, from each activity, we would need this top left corner. Let's see this one, for instance. Maybe I can color that a different color. That's already yellow. Okay, let's pick blue, for instance. We need the top left corner, the EST, earliest starting time, and we need the middle column at the bottom row here, which is the float. So we need to extract these two numbers from each of the activities here in the network diagram. By the way, here's the final Gantt chart. I kind of assume you knew what the Gantt chart is supposed to look like when you started this video, but in case you didn't, then it would be really strange, I suppose, and you know what I'm talking about. But here is the Gantt chart. It kind of looks like this, and behind it we see the input information. So a list of activities, earliest starting time, duration, and float. You need these 4 different pieces of information. And once you have that, you can make this Gantt chart. So here you can see I just extracted the EST. Let me zoom out a bit there. I just extracted the EST from the different boxes here, the different nodes in the network diagram. Similarly with float, I just extracted that from there. I'm not sure how easy that is to see, but it's just extracted directly from network diagram. List of activities and duration, well, that's kind of, we already had that. That was the input information from the network diagram. So once you have this information and you presented it in this form as a table, and by the way, it needs to be in this specific order. You need to first have the list of activities, then the EST, then the duration, then the float. You cannot change this around, sorry about that. And one more thing here, notice that I put the activities in reverse order. The first activity was A, then B and C, then D, E and F, and then G. But here I have put them in exact opposite order, and that is also important. So what you do, you just select this information, select it, then you go to insert, and then you're gonna pick a bar plot, but it's gonna be the bar plot that is horizontal and stacked. Just click that, and that is it. Voila. Now we have the Gantt chart. Almost. There are some differences there that we need to address. So first of all, it doesn't look quite the same. The reason for that is that I have done some changes to the cosmetics here. Usually changing cosmetics and the aesthetics of the graph is kind of just optional, just flavor. But in this case, you kind of have to do it. So first of all, as you can see here, just to explain my Gantt chart here, these activity bars here are the duration, and to the right there, for the non-critical activities, you have the float. But you see the activities start at the earliest starting time. So what's going on there? Actually, I just made them invisible. So it's stacked there. So first you have the EST, then you have the duration, and then you have the float. So your first order of business here is basically to select the EST here, the blue part in this case, and you're going to change that aesthetically to have no fill and no line. Ta-da! Pretty nice, right? And similarly, you can change here the float envelope. So usually you have no fill, or no, you don't have no fill. I think you have the lights turned off. Hold on a second. Much better. What you can do here is to just make it invisible, and then you have a black line, black border here, but you make it dashed, like that. And one more thing you can do here is to kind of do some color coding. You don't really need that because of the float envelope. If you have a float envelope, that means you are dealing with the non-critical activities. If there is no float, then it's a critical activity. But it could be nice here to color code them, so to give, for instance, the critical activities could be red. We could make that red. So all of the could be red, and the non-critical could be green, and so on and so forth. And also you can change here the labels. We can do that also very quickly. So let's see. Let's just select data. So number 2 here, edit. That would be the duration. Okay. And 3 here, that would be float. There is a label here for series 1, but we don't need that one. So what I'm gonna do is just to click here and just delete it. So there we go. And then we could change this to be the Gantt chart. So that is essentially how you do it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But there is one additional thing I want to point out. That is it's extremely tedious to sit here and manually change the coding here for every single one of these activities. This doesn't take that long time when you only have 8 activities, but this is tedious. And also, if I were to change the durations here, then the results could change here. Non-critical could become critical and vice versa. So I'm going to show you a way here to make this a bit more efficient. It's not more efficient with small examples, but anyway, let's look at it. So here again we have the same input information. We have list of activities, early starting time, duration, and float. And I'm going to make a new table here. This is the same table, just repeat it twice. But I use some if conditions. So here, if the float is equal to 0, then I'm going to take the EST. Otherwise, I report nothing, just like not available. So only if the activity is critical, basically, am I going to output the information. So copying over information from here to here, but only if the activity is critical. And then I do exactly the same thing, just kind of opposite. So if the activity is not critical, and then I'm going to output it. So these two combined will be the same information. It's just spread twice now. Do you see that? I don't think I did a very good job explaining that, but just look at the equation there. Using if condition, basically to just get the information. So what I'm going to do now is to, again, select this data, go to insert, go to horizontal stacked bar plot like this, amazing. And then I'm going to do some changes to the aesthetics here. Now the idea here is that critical and non-critical activities are actually two different sources here. So let's see, I need to do the formatting twice now for the EST and the float, but the benefit is that I only need to change the color of the activity bar, the durations, only twice. Instead of doing it 8 times, I only need to do that twice. So that is the benefit. So let us just repeat there now the formatting for the early starting time and for the float. There we go. So see now they're automatically two different colors because they are actually two different sources of data. So now I can actually just change all of the non-critical activities simultaneously and change all of the non-critical activities simultaneously. So that is quite nice, I think. So I can just to finish off here, change this again. So we can go to mark select data is called, and then here you can change and basically end up with this thing. And the labels that you don't need there, those you can just delete. So yeah, that is how you do it. Not sure the explanation was good, but essentially you just need this information here, and you just make a stacked horizontal bar plot, and you do some some changes to the aesthetics. So that's it. That's how you make a Gantt chart. So hopefully don't get to see any more Microsoft Paint Gantt charts in the future.